I promise to be very quick. When I came to you last year, I asked for your approval to open community corrections in Pike County, and there were some of the judges here, and we currently have 41 participants in the program. We have a recidivism rate of about 5%, so we've done really well with those that we've had so far. We've not had to send anybody back to prison. The only ones that have been a problem are those that we couldn't get our hands on right at first, and they ended up with new charges, and that makes it kind of hard. So we've sort of adopted our policy that if we get them into our program and they're in jail, they stay in jail until we have time to get them placed somewhere else that's appropriate. As I told you before, most of our cases are drug cases, so we work really hard at long-term treatment. I have 4 people going next week to the Foundry in Bessemer. That's going to cost us $2,000, but I think that's an investment in our communities, and we're willing to make that investment in these individuals. That's the only way they're going to get that resource. Don't know if y'all have seen the Department of Justice report on our prison system, but it was pretty bad. And they don't really have the ability to provide the care that these folks need to fully recover and be someone you want to live next door to. So we're working really hard at that. No problems that I'm aware of. We've opened our office here. We're right across from the courthouse in the same building with court referral, and I've worked with Dennis for years, so that's worked very well for us in a partnership with him. They help us out when we're sort of screaming because we got too many people in the hallways, and we do the same for him. So that has worked well. The attorneys are getting familiar with our process, so the program is running very, very well. I'm very pleased with it. Any questions?
Anybody got anything?
I did bring you a list of all of the current participants. This is something I provide to law enforcement. I'll just let you pass them down. Something I provide to law enforcement on a regular basis. I just gave you Pike County, but we have 178 people in our program now across 5 counties, and I provide that regularly to law enforcement, and I provide them the whole list of everybody in every county, trying to make sure that law enforcement is aware of who's in the program and who to watch out for.
Great.
So I'm here today just to ask for a letter of support, no money.
You got it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all's time. Y'all have a good day.
You too. Ms. Joyce with the Extension Office, Ms. Joy Brown.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Joy Brown. I'm the Pike County Extension Coordinator. And on behalf of Auburn University and Alabama A&M University, I would like to invite the community as well as the County Commissioner and their office and staff to our annual grassroots meeting. This meeting will take place on August 14th at 12 noon at the College Senior Center. It will give us an opportunity to present programs that were in our area, in our county for the past year, ones that we feel like we need to install to help our community, as well as give the community an opportunity to have input on our programs and assessments. We have a survey that we sent out to people in the community, and it's ongoing. This survey will continue on until like the end of August, but we'll start working on our planning after our program. So everybody is invited. There will be free hot lunch, so hopefully it will last maybe 2 hours. I do have an invitation here for each of you, as well as our annual program reports that I just want to give to you all, so you have it for your information.
All right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Mr. Ken, y'all come on.
Thank you, sir. So, quick little history reminder for you. Several months ago, we came to you and you asked us to go out and solicit sites, some of which had been given to us as this process had worked on. We did. We received 10 submittals of potential sites, some of which that we solicited, some of which were brought to us unsolicited. Some of them were eliminated rather quickly because either they were not the right size or they didn't have the infrastructure requirements or some of that sort of stuff. So you'll remember that several meetings ago, we came to you with 6 sites. Y'all in executive session narrowed that down to 4 and asked us to go research those sites a little further, talk with the landowners about pricing and all of that sort of stuff, which we did. And then 2 months ago, we brought those 4 sites to you. In addition to having the pricing on that information, we had done an independent feasibility analysis of all 4 of those sites. They were ranked, each one was ranked individually by 4 members of our staff independently of each other. Then when we talked with y'all about the part that was important to you, we took those and we weighted the survey based on that. And when we came back to you 2 months ago, there were 2 sites that stood out. One was the road maintenance site, the other was the Dunbar site. The other 2 sites that we looked at, one was south on 231 and one was the Henderson Black and Green property on downtown on the other side of the railroad. So at that meeting, you asked us to go and do a real in-depth dive at the development cost of those 2 sites, because one of the sites you owned, the other sites you would have to purchase. And we were tasked with trying to decide the value of the development cost to get each of those sites ready to build. We brought you that information last month, and you asked us many questions about our analysis, and I'm going to go through that analysis here in just a minute, and asked us between last meeting and this meeting to address some of the questions that y'all raised and to come back to you with some development cost numbers as a result of those questions. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. On the maintenance facility site, everybody knows where it is, north on 231. We identified all of the following components of the development. And so what I'm going to do is just go down these components, and I'm going to say yes or no that it's there or it needs to be brought there. And then I'm going to give you the pricing accordingly. So on the maintenance side, is there any demolition to be done? No. Will a traffic light be required? Yes. You'll have to have a pretty significant traffic signal at 231 based on the traffic counts that the jail and the court facility would require. The road leading up to where it'll turn off and go to part of the road maintenance site would have to be improved and then extended on. You got new roadways, new base, curb and gutter, street lights. You've got to improve the water and sewer that's out there. You got a pretty significant amount of fill to put on that site to level that site, but most of that dirt's on site, so there's value there. You got to clear and grub the new roadways. You got to improve the maintenance roads. You've got to build a road to go around this facility so that the maintenance employees can get back to the dirt field that they're using. The electrical service has to be improved. There's got to be some work done at the maintenance yard because the parking is going to have to be moved from one side of the building to the other. And is there any purchase cost? No. The total development cost of that particular site to get it ready to start building on is $2,064,000. Okay. The Dunbar site, you've got to buy the property. You've got to do the demolition of the existing facilities. A traffic light may or may not be required, but we've got that pricing in there. The existing curb cut is there. You don't have to overlay the tie-in to 231. The dirt work for the new road is not required. New road base and paving is not required because you're going to be putting in parking lots up on the front, and the road is fine going back to the lower area where the jail would be. Water and sewer is already there. Sufficient electrical service is already there. There's plenty of site in the back to mine the dirt from. You have no clearing and grubbing. You have no maintenance road, and you have no miscellaneous work. So the total development cost of that particular site is $1,920,000. So there is a difference of $140,144 in development costs between the two sites. You know, one of the questions that we were asked is, how can we buy a piece of property and compete with a piece of property we already own? Wouldn't I save the purchase price of that property? Well, the answer is no, because with paying the purchase price, doing the demolition, and the fact that the rest of the true development components are currently on that site because it is being used as the housing authority site, and then comparing what all has to be improved and added at the road maintenance site, there is a significant amount of difference. You know, a long time ago, somebody told me free is not always free. And even though you don't have any land cost in the road maintenance site, your development costs are a little over $2 million. And so it's our position that of all the sites that you've looked at, and in comparing the development cost of all the sites that you've looked at, that the most economical site financially is the Dunbar site. It's also the site that is closest to the majority of your population center. It's less than a quarter of a mile from the dead center of Pike County's population demographics that we studied. So with that, I'll stop and see if there are any questions.
Question?
Yeah, I see where you said that you got to install a light up on 231, and you don't have to do one on 29. We got about much traffic on 29 at the same time of the day, and you do it.
So, Commissioner Wright, I agree with you, and that was one of the questions that y'all asked in our last meeting, and we went back and looked at the traffic counts, and you may be required to put one in there. I've adjusted these numbers to take one. The difference is you're putting it on a 2-lane road instead of a 4-lane divided highway, and the cost differential between the light one place or the other is significant.
That's what I was gonna add to, because that's what I do with the State Department of Transportation is we install traffic lights. I mean, you gotta add turning lanes and.
Yeah, the improvements at the road maintenance site at 231 are in excess of $700,000, including the lights.
What does that put, because this number you've given us is the purchase price and the development cost.
The demolition, I think. The purchase price, the appraised value of the site, and it's my understanding that the housing authority cannot sell it for anything less than the appraised value, is $1,670,000. And we've got the demolition cost in there somewhere just north of $200,000. Based on a C&D landfill on the backside of that site.
So what it's going to cost to do the permit for the landfill and everything back there?
Well, it's in the city limits, and so the city's going to have to do it. And I've talked with the mayor, and he is willing to do the permitting of that site to help y'all.
Anything further?
For the demolition, to do everything possible without a traffic light, is the difference about $200,000.
That's correct. That's correct. 144,000. It's 80 and 64, 144,000.
That's with or without the traffic
Okay.
light?
That's
okay. You asked the same question I was going to ask.
that's the difference with the traffic light included.
With the traffic.
That's correct. That's correct.
Same question I was going to ask.
We added that back at Commissioner Harris's question last month in executive session.
We don't need all the power, sewer would be acceptable.
All of that is fine, and again, in talking with the city, they will stand behind anything we discover. There's a force main sewer that goes to the front that we don't know where it goes, and the city doesn't know where it goes, and so there may be some testing in there, but it's the city's force main, so they would have that off your property. And what's on your property, on the housing authority property, is sufficient. It's a 10-inch.
Timing wise, so I know there's moving parts on all of these, but in your discovery for us, the timing on the Dunbar side is okay?
It is. I've met with the housing authority board chair, and they have cleared. They've had their first lottery of residents being able to move. He thinks that within 90 days that all of the residents will be relocated. You're looking at 9 months worth of design, so there are no issues there. We think your next step, we think the property will be waiting on you before you're ready for it. Your next step is to start talking about engaging professional services, architects, and that sort of stuff.
Anything else? Okay. Ken, we appreciate it.
Thank you, and I'm gonna leave copies of this stuff with Mackenzie.
Engineer report, Mr. John.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Russell did leave me with a couple notes that we need to discuss on the first item of the CDBG, County Road 7749 and 2256. We're still awaiting notice from Montgomery on those projects, as well as the industrial access project. We're waiting the paperwork this time, though, from Montgomery, so that should be forthwith. You approved sending out annual bids for goods and services. We have them out on the street. They'll be coming back. Driveway turnouts. Rebuild Alabama Transportation Plan. We have a packet for this. Commissioner Johnson said he would like to lead the discussion on this, so I'll defer to him at that time.
Go ahead.
Well, I wanted y'all to, I've talked with everybody about it, and I'd almost rather you lead off on it because you're y'all that got the engineering, but we've talked about this. They, some amongst us, I know the last several weeks, the engineer has talked with each of us individually about the current road paving list that we've had for 10 or 12 years now, and what were the first step to that. You remember a few months ago, the engineer went and reclassified the roads as A, B, and C to make it a little simpler for us to talk about, with C being the poor roads that had met the degradation factor that they needed to be on the resurfacing list. B was the ones that were headed that direction, and A were the roads that were in good shape. What I have tried to work with Oliver on, 2 years ago when we started trying to work on the 24-month plan, we had a $35 million backlog of road and bridge projects in the county. And with the culmination of the Rebuild Alabama Act passing, we've tried to look at the new revenue coming in and just formulate a way to how to start eating this elephant one bite at a time. And we are so far behind the 8 ball with our paving that we felt like to get caught up, we needed to look at taking a big bite off the top of this. And what he's given y'all in these spreadsheets is the culmination of the 6 conversations he's had with each of us, and is a total of 50, 60, 5 miles of resurfacing that we would be looking at taking a two-pronged note, a 10-year note and a 15-year note to get the worst of the worst out of the way, and then take the remaining of our new funds and start tackling the rest of the resurfacing list that we've had, some each year. And we've talked with Chase Cobb, we've talked with Allen, and made sure that this would be meeting all the requirements and stipulations. And as of the last conversation this morning, I feel like that we can take all this data that Mr. John's given us and know that it'll pass muster. The reason we kind of, and when you look through this in-depth packet, it goes out 15 years. A lot of people's input. We've taken the new funding and looked at doing 75% of the value of the new tax revenue at pure resurfacing, and 25% of it at preventative maintenance to keep the roads that it may be 15 years before they get resurfaced, to start spending 25% of the money each year on preventative maintenance, so when we get to those roads, they're not too far gone, that we've kept them in good enough shape that they can just be resurfaced and not have to be completely rebuilt. So when we looked at it, we didn't want, Oliver didn't think, and Mr. John, you interrupt me anytime you want to, that we needed to finance a resurfacing project any longer than 15 years, that would have those projects paid for well prior to the lifespan of the road, and 10 years on the preventative maintenance work, so that money would be paid off prior to any of that deteriorating. So it actually started turning into a 15-year plan of how to deal with some of this.
Mr. Johnson, you asked one question this morning to us, that the law required us to spend less than 50% of any loan amount on the total amount of what our anticipated revenues were. So the answer is that we're spending this loan that we're requesting, the $3.6 million and the $1 million, will work out to be 49% of the total revenue. So we're meeting the muster there. Mr. Oliver did a lot of research and did this well.
Yeah, it'd be just at that cap, just below the cap. But is Mr. John and Oliver extrapolated all of the roads out of our resurfacing list and tried to look at what needed doing in the next 15 years to get us caught up. You know, if everybody will remember, we had a public hearing a year and a half ago when we started trying to quantify this. Pike County's been on a 117-year paving cycle. This will bring us to roughly a 36-year paving cycle in the county. But it has a shortfall of about $2.4 million out of the 38 pages of this. That's pretty close to what it is. That to get the 15 years worth of work we need done, this is $2.4 million shy, getting every bit of it done. So what we're still working on, it's the only thing that's not rock solid in this. There were reserve balances that had built up over time that were some of the backbone of the 24-month plan paving we did. And I've talked with McKinsey, and we're going to look at that over a 15-year time span. At what point in that 15-year time span would we be able to have two more 24-month plans to fill that gap and get every bit of this done? And this is probably by no means perfect, but it shortens the paving cycle by 2/3 and gets us back headed in the right direction. And it, most of these roads are the ones we get, especially next year's, are the ones that I think we all get the most complaints on, and a lot of them split multiple district lines, and I think everything that y'all got a big spreadsheet, and then you got some stuff stapled together that's about 38 pages, and this breaks down what would be next year's plan, and then the next 15 years of how to tackle this year by year by year.
Yes. Towards the back of it, we have a series of works that they're called WK, it's worksheets that also list the number of roads that we're planning to attempt to do during this time period. So we've got a 15-year plan with also, I mean, I put a little discussion with you on the idea that we need to do preventative maintenance. One of the things we all know that anything that man creates is going to basically fall apart, weather, age, whatever. But with pavements, we look over on this chart and brought this because it's kind of hard to see the planes. Pavements, you know, if you watch a pavement, it looks more like a tree growing. You really can't see it, but I've performed numerous years of studies on this. And about every 2 years, if you have a pavement that's, say, like 1 out of 100, if it's on 77 1 year, 2 years later, it might be 75 or 76. They move so slowly. This is what you're looking at when we the day you open it up. Maybe a year, 2 years later, it's kind of sliding down. But for a long time, the pavement will stay in good shape. But at one point, and this is what we're looking at 15, 20 years, you start mixing the big time. You'll have starting with potholes, you'll have cracking, you'll have a number of different issues that always pop up with it. So what we're looking at is if we can capture the pavement at this point, with this, you know, we'll have a low change in your maintenance, but a high cost in repair of this thing. So if we catch it right here, we're saving $4 to $5 per square yard on this repair. So that's why we want to go in a little bit of pavement preservation with our project. We allocated 20% for that to try to get us out of it. So what we're looking at is that we're trying to get our paving cycle such that we can keep it in good condition and save us from having to cost so much more money in the future. And this is the key that you're looking at. Is we can capture these roads before they go bad so that we can preserve them. And a good example is what happened on Henderson Highway. Back in 2003, we went out there and put a small leveling layer of asphalt and put a chip seal on top of it. It kept that road in good shape until we could actually find federal monies, which we did last year. We resurfaced it, Henderson Highway and the Glenwood Road. Now, we had complaints left and right, and y'all did too, about how bad it was. But because the road had not cracked, it was still in good shape, we were able to do with the minimum amount of repairs to those two roads. So this is what we're trying to do as engineers is keep our roads from going too bad and then fix the ones that are bad. It's the most economical method we can. And that's what we also try to do with all this. We're looking at the most economical repairs to get us back in the good roadway.
You know, the biggest things that, I just, since he's not here, I'll say some of the things we talked about. You know, last year we started trying to do a 3-year restriping plan that would restripe the county in thirds over 3 years. Has anything changed since this is still, next year's got about 200 miles of striping countywide.
Yes, sir.
So we looked at all of the paving that could be done and made sure we weren't planning on striping something that was going to get paved in a year or two, and we weren't needlessly spending money. And then I asked Oliver, I said, well, you know, we all get complaints about the roads, but how are we going to deal with our bridges? And this has 9 bridges in it, which is the low-hanging fruit kind of bridges, as Oliver has dubbed them, the finishing up the timber bridge replacement stuff. But the only thing that would be a part of this, but I wouldn't ask us to act on it probably until this time next year. When we get through with the striping, we have 9, Oliver designated in looking at all this, we have 9 bridges across the county that are all wooden, except they have a concrete driving layer across the top, but the entire substructure is wooden. When he culminates the striping project we started last year and we get this paving going, the funds that have allowed for the striping program, which are the overages each month and the lodging tax money, he and I felt like that about May of next year, if we sat down and had the striping caught up and had not had any major disasters that would stop us from being able to save up that overage and the lodging tax, that if we set aside the same way we're setting aside that overage each month in a bridge replacement plan, that over this 15 years, we would be able to potentially replace 6 of those 9 bridges with the solid wooden substructure. So that would give us a total of about 15 bridges, 350 miles of striping, and then at the end of the, Mr. John, without me flipping through the whole 30 pages, what was the total repaving on the 15 years? Do you remember? It was right at 200 miles. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I didn't tally that. That sounds about good.
It was miles of paving is what I was.
Chip seals, yes.
So, we've got 480 miles of pavement roughly
Yes.
countywide. So that would, in the 15 years, we would be tackling.
Two-thirds, maybe three-quarters of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's, Oliver looked more, he was talking to y'all about roads and looking at the resurfacing list, and what I've just been trying to look at with him is how to manage the money to get it done. And I think we've come up with a scenario that would allow us to get on a 36-year paving cycle with this. And when does the transportation, now the first 2 sheets y'all are looking at are just what he showed us last time, that this is what we have to start turning in each year.
Yes, sir.
For the Rebuild Alabama, and that's due
31st of August.
31st.
Yeah, so this is more not an action item tonight. This is more for discussion. Like I said, we're showing it to be brought to the commission on the 12th, so we can meet that deadline.
Okay, on the 12th.
Yes, sir. Okay. So that way it's a lot to chew on. So everybody would like to probably take a look at it through the spreadsheets. I have to eat crow. I got the wrong spreadsheet for the big sheet, so you'll need to just take that and fold it into airplane or something like that.
Have we got any questions up to this point?
I got some questions.
Go ahead. I knew we would, because we need to kind of move on as quick as we can.
Okay, we got whatever Charleston stated here tonight is a pretty good idea. But my thinking is that we have this money coming in from the tax money, from the gas tax. I feel that looking at these spreadsheets that we got, most of the roads is 65 miles, resurface. Only 1 mile, 0.1 mile is in my district, and that's gonna be a no-no. That's what it seemed like until it's slightly different from me. And equal share of this is, if we divide that by 6, that'll be 10 miles for each commissioner. If we divide it by 5, because Commissioner Sellers probably don't have any roads in the county to resurface, that'll be 13 miles.
Well, I got some that I wanted there because I got people that's asking about them, so.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying
Right.
that if you don't. So equal share ought to be good. We're gonna have to probably borrow this money and do it on those bases.
Can I point out something? Back in the 70s and 80s, when your interest rate was 7%, 8%, when we borrowed money on a loan and pledged our monies for a number of years, you actually lost money as a government. But now with the new interest rates at 3% and the inflation about 2%, you're going to see we borrow this money is actually going to be probably better for us, because instead of these roads, because rate inflation is going to increase. So if you surface a road for $100,000 this year, next year it'll be $103,000 by inflation. So our interest rate at 3%, we're basically breaking even. So yeah, this is a good deal for us to go out here and pay.
I understand that. What I'm talking about is that, I don't want my constituent to come up and say, hey, you paid 12 miles over here, 2 miles over here. But even though we're going to have some roads that joining each other going to be resurfaced together. But I want equal share of roads that will fit the criteria what we do, because they're gonna have to be voted on the commissions here.
Yes,
Not by
Commissioner.
anybody else.
We,
They're voted on by the commission.
part of our list also, we looked at how many good roads a district has and came out there and said, okay, there are a lot of good roads, but like 3314 was one of the, hey, we just popped that on top of the list there. So we went through and said, well, there's these roads here that really need to be done. And so what we're trying to do is address the worst roads that we can with this.
I just don't want you to put all the money in one district or two districts, that's all I'm saying.
Well, yes, sir. Commissioner would be more. Have you got some roads you'd like also us to consider?
I got some.
Oh, please. Well,
And I asked Russell, let's ride, and he hadn't came yet to call me to let's ride.
All right. What else, Commissioner? Harris?
That's what I wanted to get across
Okay.
to,
Go ahead,
those
Ted.
points.
Just really quick, before I ask the question I wanted to ask, I want to make sure that I know this is discussion and rightfully so. This list is a working list that we all gave you a few roads off of. As we're assessing roads, though, there's a couple of things we need to keep in mind. So the way our districts are laid out, I know we want to, whatever we do, we want to look at all the constituents all the way across the county. But if we're talking about miles of roads, then districts aren't equal. There's, for instance, let's take my district. I have probably just right at 2/3 of the roads in the county, almost. All right, so I'm not, we want to look at this however we need to look at it, but we don't need to be short-sighted enough to think that we got 6 equal districts when it comes to roads. All right, I want to get that out there. And then second, as we assess our road list, I hope that we will be apolitical in it because, there were some roads that I beat up Oliver pretty hard because I wanted when he had the conversation with me because, they're in my district and they're pretty bad. And he made a good point to me, and I had to concede, which seldom happens when I'm arguing about something like that. But, hey, look at your traffic counts.
Yes.
So as you're assessing these roads and invest this money in roads that have a traffic count of 500, we're not addressing what our primary responsibility on the road system is, which is the safety of the citizens of Pike County. And so absolutely we want to assess this, and I still got a lot of digesting to do and looking, and I know we're not being asked to vote on this tonight. But on the record, I just want to get out there that we definitely want to assess this more on the safety factor of our citizens and the traffic counts. If we're looking at some sort of division part of it, then we've got to take into account the number of road miles that we have. And then the question I was going to ask, and we may need to postpone it, I'll ask you think about it, you can answer in the meeting, is you talked about 49% of the new revenue from the gas tax being tied up in the debt service on these. And you talked about a little bit of what I wanted to ask about, explain to us how that's beneficial to us and not spending all that pay as you go. And you addressed that before I asked it. But I want to talk a little bit in the general session or regular meeting about what we'll have left each year to still work on a yearly plan. I know, I think you got it in there. But save the answer to that question.
We need to move on.
That's the last thing, sir. It was just so yes, you can digest it. It's back here and towards the back. I'm a real crafty person. It's called RV2, Revenue 2, that shows how our inflow and outflow of cash will come with this.
What else do you have that we need to discuss for tonight for your business?
I have, late this afternoon, I received notice that we might receive a deed for the paving, for building the bridge on County Road 6650. This is the FEMA bridge that fell in 2015. So it may come up. I can't guarantee you these folks have been just as slippery as an eel trying to put the pieces down, but it looks like we might get something moved forward on this.
Oliver, if you could look, Oliver, if you don't think he'd mind you going through his notes, he had these first 2 pages, and he had which district the roads were in, And when he showed that to me Wednesday, it was a pretty even split between 5 of the districts, except for Mr. Robin, because he doesn't have a lot of roads, but it had the 1 or 2 that he'd specified. Most of these split multi-districts of some shape, form, or fashion. But if you could find where he wrote down, he had each of these, and then under the lat longs, he had 4, 5, and 6, or 3 and 5, and he had what districts the roads were in. And if you were able to put your hands on that and forward it to Mackenzie where she could send it out to all of us, I think that'd be helpful.
Yes, sir. And also include that tomorrow I'll put in the bridges that Mr. Oliver did tell me he wanted to put in there.
Okay.
Okay, you got anything else?
No, sir.
Thank you. EMA.
Just have one quick thing, and I'll talk as I move up there. This is on the Mixville project, the Mixville Shelter Project. We are beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. If you haven't been out there, the structure is up. Modular Connections is about 2 days away from finishing their part of it. We are beginning to get the utilities ready to be turned on. I need to ask tonight a suspension of the rules and the vote for a $600 expenditure to the Pike Water Authority so that we can get the meter set and get the water hooked up. And then the other utilities, as we work with them, we'll come back to you. But we know we've got to have that one done, so I'll be coming to you tonight for that. And the only other question, I think this is a question for the attorney, is there a deed on that property, or does the county own that property, or how is that? The Water Authority was requesting the owner or the...
I'll have to look, I can't remember.
Okay. But I'll work on that.
I want to say there's a lease back on it. We did a lease of some kind, but I'll get with you.
Okay. All right. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Alan, you got anything?
No report.
Does any commissioner have anything they need to report at this time? Okay, administrative report.
I'll try to be quick. First up under my report is the Regions Resolution. And what this is to call on the 2010 warrants. This is part of the 24-month plan where we've been setting aside money, and we want to call in $400,000 of the debt on those warrants. And it's just a resolution that we have to do to send in to let them know that we're going to do that. No questions on that. Second is a checking account closure on the Rex Lumber account where we had that additional funds come in from cutting the trees and clearing off the property. We've been using that to pay back the interest-free loan with South Alabama Electric. We're about to use up all the money that was left in that account, and once we do that in August, we'd like just permission to close it, and we can do that at the August the 12th meeting. The Regions Resolution, we will need to suspend the rules and go ahead and get that done because we've got to have it in 60 days in advance. The next thing is completion of probation. Courtney Brown from our office actually completed her 6-month probation today, so I will have a memo for that in your agenda next time. We'll move that to current business. There are 2 items that have come up today that I wanted to add. The first would be the legislative committee appointment for the ACCA. Currently, Commissioner Copeland serves on that, and we'll need to either reappoint or appoint someone for that and let them know by the middle of August. We can wait until the next commission meeting because it's not due till a few days after the next commission meeting. And there'll be something more in your package next time. Lastly, the Lee County Youth Development Facility and the DYS juvenile contracts, they're up for reapproval. Usually we don't have those till closer to budget time, but I asked them to get them to us earlier because we're so late getting those. And these are just states that are contracts that are through the state also where they pay a portion for us. We just have to adopt the agreements, and we'll have that on the next agenda also. Under current business, we do have the Pike County Jail if you choose to take any action on that tonight. The budget, we will need to set budget hearings. Usually, I think if we wanted to do this the next meeting before the next commission meeting at 4, we could have some budget hearings for the elected officials and department heads to come in and present what they're asking for. I believe that's going to be all that's under the administrator's report. Do you have any questions?
Okay, any questions? Okay, thank you, Keith. Pike County Commission work session will now come to a close. We'll take about a 5-minute recess and come back for our regular meeting.